I also want to join Ronnie in congratulating William in setting up a new think tank. We really need more and more think tanks not just in South Africa, but in Africa. I happen to be deputy chairman of one of the oldest think tanks in Africa, which is the South African Institute of International Affairs. And this year it's celebrating its 80th anniversary. And we do assist the Department of International Cooperation and the government to understand the modern world, the global world, the new world that is emerging in the post-Cold War era. So I think more and more of these discussions are necessary, and think tanks like Democracy Works are really important. I also should thank FES for supporting the initiative, and we need more support for these initiatives. One of the things that gets forgotten is that during the struggle against apartheid, we had huge amount of support from the European countries in terms, for example, of our media, of media diversification in South Africa. And the media in this country, what was called the alternative media, played a very critical role in bringing to the world the crimes of the apartheid regime. So I think the Western foundations, we have to encourage them to keep supporting think tanks in South Africa. We can't get away from the fact that South Africa is a rich country, but most South Africans are poor. So William cannot finance a think tank himself, and the rich South Africans, like the guys who are giving themselves bonuses of 14 million, 17 million, will not finance an independent think tank. So we have to appeal to the foundations outside South Africa to keep supporting initiatives like this for very practical reasons, that the people who have always supported democratization of this country don't have the resources to finance the development of our civil society. The last time I came here was for the launch. No, I was not in the prison. The last time I came here was for the launch of Corruption Watch. And I think there is nothing better than to illustrate the importance of civil society than what has happened in the short life of Corruption Watch, which was launched by COSATU with especially with a great advocacy from Moeletsi Mbeki. Since one of the people who came, the government was totally opposed to the setting up of Corruption Watch. But when they saw that there was a strong movement in support of it, they sent Jeff Radebe to come and speak at the launch of Corruption Watch. And he spoke very well. Those of us who were here were very pleased and looked forward to cooperation with the government on the way forward. But if you look at what has happened to COSATU since the launch of Corruption Watch, I would say watch out for hypocrisy. We need a think tank on hypocrisy, or maybe this should be one of your projects. Jeff Radebe is the chairman of what is emerging to be one of the notorious gatherings in the South African government, which is the security cluster. We are seeing the emergence of the security cluster, which has been very busy in trying to destabilize COSATU, in trying to get Moeletsi Mbeki removed from COSATU. And of course, we know what they are doing in the case of the public protector's reports. So this is something, it's a lesson that we have to keep in mind, that many good words don't lead to good actions. We shouldn't forget that this week is the 51st anniversary of the founding of the Organization of African Unity. And this was actually an important event for Africa. We wouldn't be sitting here if it were not for the Organization of African Unity. The OAU set up a committee, which was the Liberation Committee. And the Liberation Committee had developed the OAU Refugee Convention. And the OAU's Refugee Convention is very distinctive because it recognized liberation movements. Other refugee conventions don't recognize freedom fighters, and they don't recognize the role of liberation movements. The OAU Refugee Charter recognized liberation movements, and as a result of that, the ANC and PAC became the voice of the people of South Africa for many years after 1993. But I would like to point out that the African experience for us in South Africa is something that is very, very, very important. And we in South Africa, I know we love to look at experiences outside Africa. But the reality, yes, we have to do that, but we have to look at African experiences very carefully. Since the launch of the OAU, there are two experiences that I just want to touch on. One is the experience of Algeria. I visited Algeria in 1971. We had a students' association in the United Kingdom, and the association decided that those who had completed their studies have to go home. So for us who couldn't go home, we had to choose a country where we could go and make a contribution. I chose two countries that I wanted to go to. One was Tanzania, and the other one was Algeria. Since I had been to Tanzania, I had an idea of what was going on. So I had to go to Algeria to go and see for myself so that I could make my decision. One of the things so I spent a month with the ANC office, which was led by a very distinguished ANC diplomat, the late Johnny Makatini. And in the time I was there, every weekend, the workers at the Casbah took me around the Casbah first to show me the Battle of Algiers had been released a year or so before, to show me where the military actions against the French colonialists took place in the Casbah. But on the last day, they took me to the heights of Algiers, where there is a Catholic church that tells you something about Western imperialism. In a Muslim country, you build at the height of you built a Catholic cathedral. Anyway, one of the workers pointed out to me a suburb of Algiers. Algiers is a beautiful place. Visit it if you can. They pointed out a suburb to me where they said, since I was planning to come to Algeria, they were encouraging me to come and work in Algeria. They pointed out a suburb where they said that is where the leaders of their revolutionary war are now staying. And one of them pointed out that they are now, I could get a villa there also if I came. Those days I was working in the construction industry. And they said I could get a villa, and that I could also, the people who live there, the leaders, are now employing as their domestic workers the guerrillas who they had been leading during the liberation struggle. Now, for me, this rang a lot of bells, and it raised a red flag about me coming to work in Algeria. Then I asked them, what is the difference between now, then 71, and life during the French, the war of resistance against the French? And they made something which was to come back to me many years later. They said during the war against the French, they were all Muslims together. They were all brothers and sisters. Today, there is that suburb over there. This came back to me many years later in 1991 when the civil war in Algeria started. The civil war in Algeria, which has claimed 200,000 lives, started because the Islamic Salvation Front won an election. It was a free and fair election, and when the Islamic Salvation Front, it was against, this was a new party in competition with the National Liberation Front, which was almost identical to the ANC, if I can say. When they won the election, the military and the establishment annulled the election, and you had one of the most horrible civil wars we've seen in Africa, which is the recent civil war which started in 1991 in Algeria. The second country which I lived in was Zimbabwe. And I think we have a great deal to learn from Zimbabwe. Again, in Zimbabwe, we have seen the slaughter of the Ndebele population after the freedom of Zimbabwe by the 5th Brigade, and we have seen the slaughter of MDC electorate supporters after 2000. Right now, I will conclude, I'm reading a manuscript for our publishing company written by a woman called Justina Mukoko. She was the director of the Zimbabwe Peace Program, which reported on the persecution of the anti-Mugabe factions. And it's a horrible story of how the Central Intelligence Organization kidnapped her and for over 2 months held her incommunicado and brutalized her in ways that I'm sure you don't want me to repeat here. So I think these are the warning signs about the African experience without us leaving our own continent, that we have to realize that democracy is always at risk. And therefore, institutions that defend and advance democracy are very important.